Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody is well. Some feedback for everybody. I get a lot of emails when I touch the podium. My hand sanitizer is here after. This is my podium, though, but we do have guests, so I wanted just to talk to our concerned citizens who always email me about touching the podium. Thank you for being here. As we've talked about over the last few days, we've had a lot of testing done in our community. We've stayed ahead of that. We've never been in a situation where we weren't testing people who are symptomatic with flu-like symptoms, where we have to then rule out COVID-19. Because of that, we continue to get more tests in. At one point last week, not this past week, but the previous week, we had our first 3 days at the triage testing site. Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, we had a surge in demand. We've now started that log jam has gotten through. The last 3 days, we've seen quite a few test results back. And with more tests, we know we'll get more positives. Okay, so let's get the updated numbers. We currently have 146 cases. That's up 23 cases from yesterday. 20 of our 146 cases are individuals in the hospital. 8 individuals are now in critical condition. 3 individuals who have been in the hospital are now released from the hospital and they are at home. When we look at who the individuals are that are in the hospital, what we can share with you is this. Every decade, except for those under 20 years old, are represented in the hospital. So I'll go through how many are in their age demographics, but I think that's important to realize that out of every demographic, except for those who are teenagers, have all seen folks in the hospital at one point in time here. 79 of our positive cases are females, 67 are males. We have 6 individuals who are under 19. We have 31 individuals in their 20s, 21 individuals in their 30s. We have 24 individuals in their 40s. We have 25 individuals in their 50s. We have 19 in their 60s. We have 16 in their 70s. We have 3 individuals in their 80s, and we have 1 case in their 90s. Right now, we have 482 different people in mandatory isolation and quarantine. This is all of our positive cases and all of those that our health department has deemed necessary to be in a quarantine. Right now, if you're a positive or you're in a quarantine, you get some legal paperwork that's brought to you. Again, this is part of the process. I know this can be intimidating if you're getting a court order that you're to be in a quarantine or be in a mandatory isolation. This is necessary to protect the public, but that does not mean we're not here for you. If you have any issues, if you need any help, you need to contact us, certainly. Percentage breakdown, 25% of our cases are under 30, 40% are under 40, 56% are under 50, 73% are under 60. 27% of our cases are over 60 years old. Breakdown by municipality. City of Syracuse, 47. Town of Clay, 19. Town of Cicero, 14. Town of Salina, 12. Town of DeWitt, 10. Town of Camillus, 9. Town of Manlius, 7. Town of Onondaga, 6. Town of Pompey, 6. Town of Lysander, 5. Town of Geddes, 3. Town of Skaneateles, 3. Town of Lafayette, 2. Town of Spafford, 1. Town of Tully, 1. And Town of Van Buren, 1. There's nothing really newsworthy or noteworthy with these breakdowns. Our larger municipalities have more people. Of course, they'll have more positive cases. We see that with our largest municipality being the city. Our largest town is Clay. Cicero and Salina, again, 2 of our 4 largest towns. So nothing really noteworthy in that spread. From a testing standpoint, we received back almost 2,800 tests with 146 positives. When you between yesterday's briefing and today, we've received 315 tests back in that period of time. Again, the backlog for the most part has been addressed. We're almost getting to the point where we're within a 2-day turn time of testing. You will have your anomaly here or there, but certainly we feel comfortable with that. Right now, 5.2% of those being tested are positive. Process after a positive test result. The health department will contact you. If you have a primary care physician, they'll contact you as well. To begin the investigation, the nurse who calls you will ask standard questions related to your health, and they will gather direct contacts a person has had since the onset of symptoms. This is how they will know who goes into quarantine because of their direct exposure towards the positive patient. Direct exposure, again, this is something that as this goes on, we're anxious, and understandably so. But direct exposure is not passing an acquaintance in the grocery store. We're talking about people who you've had direct physical contact with, and people who you are consistently in direct contact with, most likely living with. Okay? I can't say enough to everybody that the same rules today of common sense really need to apply today that we've been talking about for well over a month now. If you're sick, we need you to stay home. Certainly in some of these cases, there was the potential of a contact because people didn't take that advice. For the most part, that's not the case, but if you're sick, you need to stay home. If you're an essential employee right now and your company is still operating and you're sick, even with minor symptoms, we've heard about these cases, severe headaches, sore throat, any of these symptoms, stay home. If you need help with your employer or whatnot, we can help you with that, help make that explanation. And we ask our employers to be smart and responsible as well. The last thing you need is a sick individual coming into work because they're feeling pressure, and then the rest of your workforce gets sick. Very tough to operate. Certainly, as we see more positive tests and more folks in mandatory isolation, our health department's resources will be focused in on the positive tests, but we certainly will be contacting those in quarantine, and we need you to stay in touch with us. We can't have you go rogue. If we are looking for you, we can't have that. We need to know where you are. We need to make sure you're healthy and know what your symptoms look like. Again, anyone who is taking a test, you have to stay in quarantine until you get your results back. I know for many of our residents that took longer than expected in some cases, but certainly that seems to be getting better as the logjam is not what it once was. If there's a gap in our investigation, we at the health department will put out an alert to the public asking for help, or asking that if you were in contact or went to that business during a period of time, you may or may not have had contact with somebody who is positive. If you see that press result or press release, please look, see if you went to that business during those hours. If you did, contact your doctor, or you can contact our health department. But if you're not symptomatic, most likely you're okay. Again, social distancing, this is something that we've talked a lot about. There's been different leaders over the last few days talking about this. There's different community commercials going on about this. This is the best strategy we have to help flatten the curve. We've talked about in these briefings over the last few days that we're getting to the point where as we get closer to getting real-time testing, 24, 48 hours, we as a community have an ability now to potentially start to see our curve flatten. The only way we can really get there, because we know we have people in quarantine that may test positive, is we need everybody else out there to social distance, to starve the virus. Don't let the virus go from contact to contact, so that once we get through this process with these individuals in quarantine, we start to flatten that curve, and then we can continue to starve it and hopefully start to see the curve come down. When that happens is when we can really start to look at what a return, an economic return, and a return to some of our social norms looks like. So I think we're getting closer because we're getting real-time testing almost back. The backlog's not there. Our health department's identifying positive cases, identifying quarantines, but we have to practice social distancing. And the only reason we make rules or executive orders on this isn't because we want to punish people. It's because through our investigations, we're seeing examples of people potentially doing things that are harmful to the public at large, to themselves and to the harmful to the public. So what do we do then? We look at policies, we look at emergency orders we can implement that give us the tools to prevent that type of behavior. We don't have time to babysit the public with a lot of these issues, but we need to give our law enforcement agency tools when there's egregious cases. They can go and they can do their job, all with the intention and the goal to help keep you safe. Okay? Access to assistance. Let's take a minute to run through some important phone numbers and websites. Certainly, we want to thank all of our partners in government, our health department, our emergency management teams, our frontline essential businesses who are working, our daycare providers, our grocery stores. We want to ask businesses as well. We've gotten a lot of emails about different types of businesses, ice cream stores. With parents at home right now, getting ice cream at night is a good valve. It's a good relief. Businesses, please work with everybody so that they're not standing in line on top of each other. I know some cases that's hard, but plan for that when you see the weather and you know your business is going to be there. If you need questions or have questions, email us and we can give you some guidance. But also, certainly our upstate triage hotline. If you are sick or symptomatic, you have questions, you don't have a doctor, call this number, 315-464-3979. Our senior healthcare worker and adult nutrition line has been busy. This is if you're in this you're an independent senior who now, due to Matilda's law, is staying home, doing what you should be doing. Everybody's looking out for you. You need help with a meal. You need help because you have emergency supply issues. Call this line, 315-218-1987. Our child care solutions line. Daycare, you're an essential business, you're a healthcare worker, you're an emergency management or some of our EMS team or first responders, you have a daycare issue, call this line, 315-446-1220. Again, donations. I want to thank everybody who's been making donations, whether it's to our food bank or any of our other nonprofits, but certainly if you have emergency medical equipment, otherwise known as PPE, please contact us. We would love to take some of it off your hands. 315-435-2525. Again, to volunteer in any way, a volunteer CNY, 315-428-2229. And those who need a break or they need to talk to somebody, times are stressful. And certainly parents are on the front lines at home. If you need to talk to somebody, we have a line, 211. Please contact us there. We have mental health professionals there. Certainly, we want you to get the help and talk to people during these trying times. We're over a week into this, and so certainly everybody's patience is going to be tested and has been tested. I just want to thank everybody at home, including my wife, Kate, who has been a saint. Saying that, before I get into, we've had a huge demand for people wanting to hear about Cameron and Joe and these individuals who send me these beautiful love letters. We'll get back into one. I got a great one to talk about later, but we'll take questions first.
A newsletter today indicating that DPS will help break up some off-campus gatherings if that's going on. Yeah. Have you heard or have there been reports of this going on yet?
Yeah, we get tips and we get emails. That's why we set up the line. We set up the infrastructure at 911 so that it can go through a better process. There were some concerns about students coming back to their off-campus housing. I used to live off campus, back up on the hill. I went to Lemoyne. I get it. You got a house you want to go back to. This is serious stuff. And many of we have cases throughout the country of college students that came back from spring break and came back from abroad. So I just think we just got to take this seriously. And again, there is an individual, at least one, I don't know how many, in their 20s who has been hospitalized because of this in our community. So this is a serious virus. Our doctors are working very hard to try to figure out ways to treat it. We need to do our part and give the medical community more time. How do we do that? As an everyday citizen, use social distance. Okay.
Yesterday and today, obviously, it's been really hit home that social distancing is the most important. Have there been any more updates with the amount of complaints that 911 has received or law enforcement has received since yesterday? I know there was 50.
Yeah, we had 50 yesterday. I didn't get a briefing yet, Adrian, on how many today. I had one example. Someone emailed me right before saying there was a nail salon open in the town of Clay. The lights were flashing. We sent somebody over there. It was right in the neighborhood. The lights were still flashing. It was closed, right? So there's a heightened sense of anxiety. We've gotten a lot of complaints about golf courses. The state is allowing golf courses to stay open under certain criteria. Whether or not that criteria is being followed to the letter of the law that moment in time, we don't know unless we have somebody there. So this is kind of where we share this data every day with everyone so that they kind of get the big picture here is this is here, this is dangerous, people are getting sick, there's people fighting for their lives right now, and one of our neighbors has died. So we know our best way to fight back is to starve this thing. So please be part of the solution. Don't take liberties that are no longer really afforded to the public at large. And for many people, it's not if they get sick. It's almost for younger people. If you get sick, and who else gets sick? Even though the data is now showing that younger people are getting sick, and depending on how bad this case is, they're having a hard time as well.
The 20 hospitalizations, is that the current number? Does that include?
Yeah, that's the current number, Doug. So we got, let me just make sure I'm reading it correctly. Currently, there's 20 people in the hospital. There's 8 folks in critical condition. And there's been 3 individuals now that have gone into the hospital that have been discharged because they're doing better.
And none of those include the unfortunate death that we've had so far?
These do not include our neighbor who passed.
I'm sure you saw the president considering to put New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut into a mandatory quarantine. What are your thoughts on that? And, how would he, I don't know how, but would enforce that? Talk about that a little.
I think the debate about travel from hotspots to other parts of the world is a fair debate to have. New York City, parts of the suburbs outside of New York City are certainly hotspots. If you're in Idaho or West Virginia, you might consider Onondaga County a hotspot compared to the number of cases we've had compared to the cases they have. So I think that is a fair debate. We've always said, we know from many of our cases, many of them are travel related, then you have contacts from that. Not all are travel related. And once the travel comes into the community, you then have a community spread. So we've been looking at there's conversations, once you can start to flatten that curve and you want to kind of start to get it to go the right way, what else can we do to help that besides social distancing? And so I think you've seen some county executives we talked about who would like to see a quarantine of individuals that come to their county from these hot spots south of the Hudson. I think that's a fair debate to have, but I think that's something that to be done and to be done well, that needs to be a decision made at the state level.
And what would you say to people, who have families downstate or in New Jersey who might want to go visit their family?
Yeah.
Now's not really the time. What would your advice be to them?
Yeah, don't. It just don't. It's just not smart. It's not. There's widespread community spread there, so everybody. And if you look at it, it doesn't matter where you live now. The safest place for you is if you're really at your house and you're at home, and that's the safest place. Some of us work for essential businesses. Everybody in this room, right? And so we go to work every day. And so we're practicing social distancing here, and we're doing the right things. But there's no reason to go see anybody outside of your home right now in Onondaga County. Tough it out. Let's get through this. Let's if we can get through this. I think we're gonna have so much testing back by Monday that we're gonna have an idea on what this, if this thing's gonna flatten out next week or not. And then if it starts flattening out, then we start, really hunkering down on social distancing.
Going off of that testing point, so going into next week, we should expect to see more of those results. But has there been discussion and any updates? I know it was mentioned yesterday about testing those who are coming out of quarantine, because I feel like that date is soon approaching.
Yeah, so right now, if you look at our first positive case on Monday will be 2 weeks old, right? We know via investigation that some of these positives probably had it before last Monday, and they just weren't tested positive. So Dr. Gupta and her team are working with CDC as we speak on what a protocol looks like for allowing those out of quarantine, and then what the protocol is going to be for people who are positive, who we now believe may be better, and what happens then. So Dr. Gupta and her team will give guidance on that next week.
County Executive, we've talked about the sort of gaps in investigations. There have been news releases. Have you found positive cases from those fruits? People at the eyeglass place or the church?
Yeah, Doug. So we've had an influx of cases over the last 4 days, right? We have biggest days were really the last 4 days. So our health department goes through a layer of identify the case, quarantine. Eventually, some of the positives are going to be contacts of the cases. They then got to go back and identify. They get a positive. They got to go back at their tree, put that in there. Then eventually, they start to look at each case and what's in common. And when we get information from the public, whether it's correct or not, we always give it off to the investigators, and they start looking at that. So I think what we'll better be able to answer how many interrelated cases there are, not contact cases. We had 8 in the beginning of the week. Our department's gotten slammed with new positives. So we'll probably have a better idea on what that number looks like probably mid to late next week.
Can you go over a little bit about what that interconnected number means? I know you've said it before. But
yeah, an interconnected case would mean you had one person who, through an investigation, they learned was at the same party as this person, and then that person was there as well, and it takes time to put all that together. And so that's kind of what an interconnected case looks like through an investigation. A connected case is you're positive, you're living with your brother and sister, they test positive, those are connected, and those folks were in quarantine. So we've always said right now we're a 5% test. Out of all the tests, 5% are essentially positive. We've always said there's probably going to be a higher probability of quarantine individuals who get testing positive than 5% because they've had direct contact with somebody who's already tested positive.
Looking at these numbers so far, what is County Executive person kind of playing out? What have you learned about sort of how this spreads in our community? Is there like one party that kind of set off a bunch of cases? Was it
and again, at some point, I hope we could tell that narrative. This has not been like Westchester County, where you had an individual who went to a party where they literally had 100 contacts from that party, and then that went into Long Island, New York City, and then you saw a massive spread, and you can really trace it back to one circumstance. That we have not seen that here, and certainly, maybe at some point Dr. Gupta and our team can try to figure it out. I think, Doug, and I have no scientific data, I think we're very connected in New York City, and New York City is very connected to the rest of the world. I think at some point somebody came in on an airplane, came here for work, or they went here, came back, boom, and then it all starts, right? And it may have been not just one person, it may have been 3 or 4 or 5 people at the same time, right? So that's the challenge through all of this, there's no 100% risk mitigation technique that government can work on to stop the spread here. That's why we need each family to do it and lead and follow the guidelines the best they can. And that means it's tough, right? This is not how we're used to behaving. We're asking for people to change their behavior.
Do you have any guess at this point if the trends continue when that, that apex that the governor's talked about in our hospitals might occur?
Look, right now our hospitals here are in good shape, and we're planning for the worst case scenario, right? So we're ahead of that. We're watching what's going on down there. We're learning. We're trying to do everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen. That's why I get up here. I had one person tease me. I don't know if they were teasing at me or yelling at me. It was an email saying that I think I'm a priest coming up here and talking down to people. I don't like going to confession either. It's kind of, it's gut check time there when I go to Father Fry can tell you. But look at the reason why we're doing this is because we're using every tool we can to try to slow this down, identify who's sick, get them help, and then by doing that, you quarantine, and then you contain that situation. And then by slowing everything else down, you can then find the other situations and then contain that. Then eventually, hopefully, we're just working on people that we've quarantined, making sure that they're okay, boom, boom, boom. But to do that, to get there, you really need a flattened curve, and then you really need the community to really dive into social distancing. And as hard as it's been now, when we really got to, have home run batting averages on social distancing, is when we flatten the curve. Because if then we do that and we starve it out, then it's going to go down. But we still got work to do. It's been hard. We're doing okay, but we still got work to do.
Just one last follow-up. I know Cuomo's thrown out this 40,000 ventilators as sort of that worst-case scenario. Is there a number like that you have for our county?
Yeah, I think remember, those numbers are being used in context with 8 million people in New York City, another 2 million in Long Island, the other counties around there, another 2 million, right? So you're talking 12 million people, right? So we're not a community when we're talking about the public health of 470,000 people. Like I've said, we're a community of 1 million people because we're the front lines in this county with our infrastructure for all of our other counties in North Country. So we've looked at what our capacity is at the hospitals. We've gone out and got some more ventilators. I know the New York Times thought I was mean because I wanted to go get ventilators for this community, and I wouldn't tell everybody where I was getting them, but that's okay. I think county residents are probably happy with me about that. But I think we're in good shape, but we're identifying supply chains along the way, and we'll pick up ventilators where we deem we need to. Right now, I think we're in good shape. The governor's got 12 million people there, and he's got a huge number of positives that he's dealing with. And so we're talking about 146 people right now with another 300 or so in quarantine. We know there's more positives out there, but we are talking about 20 individuals in the hospital right now, 8 in critical who are most likely on some sort of ICU ventilator. We have a large capacity to go before we have a problem.
Going off of that, I feel like everyone is obviously preparing for the worst case scenario. And with the governor, what are your thoughts on him sending patients from downstate here in upstate?
Look, we are in a position right now where our infrastructure is not stressed, in large part because of the good decisions that have been made by our health department, our emergency management department, our hospitals. We've made decisions along the line here to make sure that our infrastructure is not stressed. So if you're in the governor's shoes, you look at the state and you see, all right, they're okay up there. A lot of that's because of a lot of work we've already done. If I need to, can I send some patients up there? He's the governor. He signed an emergency order that allows him to do that. What my communications have been with the state has been as follows. We get it. Upstate is a state hospital. Okay, it's a state hospital. They control the board and they make board picks. But upstate is called upstate, so let's make sure we're dealing with central New York and northern New York's challenges first, and then certainly if there's capacity, then we're all New Yorkers. So that's what it is we just need to make sure we have capacity for our own residents, for the rest of central New York and northern New York, but in the event that our downstate neighbors need help, if there's beds, we need to help. That's what we do as a state. We would want the same if this was impacting us the way it's impacting them and they had capacity. I would want the same thing for my resident here to be able to go get help as the county executive in Nassau County may want for her resident here. So that's just the way these things have to be.
Have you had any conversations with any of the patients who are very ill or their families personally?
Yeah, I've been, Doug, over the last few days, I've talked to a couple different folks who are positives, and that's good. And we're having good conversations. We're making sure that they're getting the help they need. You know, a couple of these people are starting to tell their stories, which is important. And, you know, we're really proud of them. But this is, that's good, and it's good for our team and county government and our health department gets to talk to these people every day. It keeps them going. And these people are very, very happy with our health department. With their care, their level of care and communication. But this, for us, we're talking about numbers. It's very good when we can talk to people because these are numbers, but these are really people, and these are families. And everybody, that's why we're working as hard as we all have been working to make sure they get the help they need and to make sure that the number of positives is as small as possible. Okay, any other questions? I gotta talk about a friend here. Sent me a note. Okay, Sherry. Here we go. Funny how you deem the Carrier Dome to be exempt from the halt of construction. Conflict of interest? Question mark, question mark, question mark. You're a horrible politician, and you look very weathered for your age. Sherry, I gotta attack this in a couple different ways. If you're suggesting I have a conflict because I miss Dome Dogs, you are correct. If you are, as you may know, Sherry, I turned 40 this week. It's a little too close to call me an old man. It's a little too early for that. Only my kids are allowed to do that. But listen, if you want to email me any of your beauty tips, please do. I promise I won't tell Kate. So that is our mean tweet of the day, or email of the day. But certainly, Andrew Donovan is not here to ask me the good news of the day. Adrian, I know, was going to make sure that we talked about it. But it's fitting that the good news of the day is actually somebody Andrew talked to yesterday. And that's my good friend Patrick Penfield, who is one of our positive cases, who told his story. We've been asking people to end the stigma. Patrick, a Syracuse University student, was having the vacation of a lifetime. He came back, he got sick from Europe. He's also on my youth board. He's a great leader. He told his story, and he certainly wants other people in his generation to take this seriously. So Patrick, the good news is you and your leadership and the leadership role you're taking for your generation. So thank you. Okay?